Hi, everyone. My name is Mary Kate Luke. I am the marketing specialist here at Hasmark Publishing International, and I am joined today by Jen Gibson, who is our best-selling director. We are here to introduce author Will Howe. He's going to talk about his new book, Sticks in the Clouds, a little bit more about what it is and why he wrote it.
The book title, Stick in the Clouds, what does it symbolize or mean to you?
Well, the title was intentionally made to elicit some curiosity, as a lot of book titles do, and I think that it's for the reader's benefit. I think when all of us have gotten halfway through a book or further, and then all of a sudden the title appears in the context of the story, and it's like an epiphany where you go, "Oh, that's where that's what that means, or that's where that comes from." So I kind of don't want to spoil the surprise. Not that it's all that significant. It's actually pretty simple, and it gets explained twice. Once in near the beginning of the book, and then again at the end of the book. So the reader will definitely get it. But I just don't like to spoon feed everything to readers. I think they're much smarter than that, and it's sort of like if I told you in advance where I hid all the Easter eggs, there'd be no point in hiding them in the first place. So I can tell you it's not a grand secret, but sticks is a vernacular term that pilots use to refer to other pilots in the context of if you're in training in the simulator, you might say, who's your stick partner? Or you might say, he or she's a really good stick, meaning they have really good basic piloting skills. It comes from the old days where airplanes were controlled by a control stick and rudders, the stick and rudder days. And just the term sticks, it simply means pilot. And Sticks in the Clouds, towards the end of the book, one of the characters refers to them all as the best sticks in the clouds. And the reader will get it. It's, like I said, it's pretty well explained. But it just came to me and I liked it. And I think it will eventually catch on.
That's awesome. I love when you find that special moment in the story with the title in it. It's a great,
Nikki recommended Where the Crawdads Sing, and I read it, and she did that very thing. Halfway through the book, she said where the crawdads sing, in the context of the sentence she was writing, and it was just like a bell goes off in your head. It's like, oh, that's so perfect. It was just like spot on.
Awesome. Now, this is a historical fiction. So was there a lot of research that went into writing this story?
There was. I had to read probably 20 books altogether, and most of them centered around the Cuban Revolution and the what happened to Cuba under the Marxist takeover, and how it affected the people on a personal level. The mass exodus to the United States, and Olga, one of the main characters, was born in the U.S., but her parents fled Cuba just in the middle of all that turmoil, and so she grew up feeling like an exile in a way through her parents, and then Matt learns the story of the revolution and the fact that her uncle has been a political prisoner for 20 years, locked in prison cells and tortured, and he learns the story through her. I really had to educate myself. I didn't know much about it, and I read some amazing books. It's just incredible. The book by Armando Valladares, and it just explained in such graphic detail the torture of what that meant. Those political prisoners they were just treated with so much abject cruelty. And so it had to be communicated through the story why rescuing her uncle was really important, and what those people went through. And so that was an eye opener for me. I learned a lot. It was very educating. I even had to read some books on aviation, even though that's my area of expertise. I had to kind of bone up on the effect of deregulation in the airline industry. And I had to read some books on labor law and the history of labor unions in the US. And it all was necessary. It all comes through in the writing. And without that information, the writing just is flat. You don't come across as an expert. You probably come across as some kind of fraud. But it all worked out really well. I didn't use every piece of source material. And I think in the beginning, I wondered how I'd have enough content, to write the book from start to finish. But in the end, I ended up deleting about 20,000 words. I just had too much that wasn't, germane to the plot. So that's about it.
What do you hope that your readers will gain from reading your book?
Well, I hope they're inspired by the message that comes through repeatedly, because the main character is on a quest to discover who he really is as a man. And he's aware that he falls short in many ways. And he holds himself up against other people that he deems are braver or more courageous than he is. And so in the end, the main character, through the examples of what he goes through, gives the message that through tenacity and confidence and faith, and just by sheer will and not giving up, the message is that you can succeed no matter what. And it transcends the aviation part of this book. It's universal, and I think that's the message. And in the target audience, I know that's another one of your questions, but it's sort of all connected. It's not necessarily anybody that cares about aviation or the piloting profession, or even Cuba or political prisoners. The target audience is just anybody who's in touch with their humanity. And I remember I was just 21 years old when the original movie Rocky came out. I was in college, and it was just a smash hit. And I think if you were to ask Sylvester Stallone who was your target audience, he may not have even said somebody who cares about the sport of boxing. That was sort of secondary to the fact that he connected with people because he was struggling, he was poor, he wanted to do something great, and he was willing to sacrifice and do whatever it took to go and get in the ring with the world's heavyweight champion and just survive. He had no illusions about winning. He just wanted to survive. But he ends up winning in the end, and it was just, the message was powerful to me. I thought that's what makes a good story. It just, you connect with people on a very basic level, and, you take them along and hopefully reward them for their time, but you take them on a ride that's very positive in the end. It's uplifting. And, the message is that no matter what you want to do, and no matter how significant the hurdles and the obstacles are, if you just have faith and don't give up, you will most likely succeed. And there's a line that it gets repeated 2 or 3 times. It's like, you work hard and you do your best, and then you wait for Lady Luck to arrive. So that's the reason I think I wrote the book. I wanted to tell a good story that was, positive and that could connect with people.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's an important story to tell about perseverance. Now, what would you say was the most difficult part of the writing process, or the most difficult part of the book to write for you?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked me that question, because there were there were a few scenes that were daunting because I wanted them to be incredible. But in the end, I wanted the reader to see that they were credible. And you do that through hopefully creative writing and a lot of good information. And you tell a story that you convince them that, in the beginning, it's incredible, but it actually is credible. And one of them, of course, the climactic ending, but there were two parts to that were tricky. The main character goes back to his old boss in Florida in a state of desperation to try to get his hands on an airplane to rescue Olga's uncle. And he appeals to his previous boss. And why in the world would his boss ever do something so ludicrous? And when he quit his job and walked away, he kind of burned his bridges. And now he's gone back with his tail between his legs, asking for something that nobody would really believe his boss would do that. And he says, no, I'd be crazy to do that. For one thing, our insurance company doesn't cover getting shot down by a MiG-21 in Cuban airspace. So it looks like he's not going to have access to the airplane that he needs to pull off this rescue mission. But then at 6 a.m, the next day, he gets a phone call from his boss. And it turns out that through a creative stroke of luck, I was able to come up with a reason why he would change his mind and finally relent and agree to doing this. And I had, to do that, I had to come across something in my research on Cuba that was plausible. And it worked out. And I think it ended up being believable in the end. But that was tricky. There was also a crash scene that I just thought, I have to make the reading audience think that this is just impossible. This is a sure death. There's no way they could possibly survive this. And of course, there's 200 pages to go, so they survived. But it goes right to the very, very limit where it was almost a miraculous stroke of fortune where they actually did survive. And even a pilot friend of mine, she said she was just right on the edge of her seat reading that scene. So that worked out pretty well. But in the beginning, you're looking at a blank sheet of paper and you're like, how am I going to pull this off? And then the romance with Olga, I've created a character she's like most of the characters, she's a composite of probably 2, 3, or 4 people like molded into one, and with a little fantasy involved and all that. But, if she's so incredibly beautiful and just so intelligent and poised and all these great things, why would she fall for a guy like that? And so I had to develop that slowly, and I had to make the main character suffer in many ways. You couldn't just have him win the lottery in the beginning. It had to be, a hard fought battle. So that was always through the writing until they finally did get together. But those were the scenes that were the most challenging. The easy part was it would happen. Not that most of it was easy, but there were some times, and you've all written, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, where you get so into the writing where for a little while, at least, it seems like the story's writing itself, and you're just holding onto the pen for dear life, and that's what you hope the whole thing is that easy, but you have to get through those challenging scenes.
Let's see. When did your book launch, and how can people get a hold of a copy?
Well, I guess it's slated to come out on January 18th. And we haven't talked about the specifics of that. I talked with Judy. I guess it's going to go back on Amazon.
Right.
It's been languishing at the bottom of the Amazon well with millions of other books, and it's never really been promoted. It's kind of, I think maybe 20 people have read it. So I'm hoping, that it'll reach a wide audience, but I guess it'll be on Amazon and in paperback and still in ebook format. So, and the website is up. I had to struggle a little bit this week to get the email wired to the new domain. And that's always tricky. I don't know why. It's not my area of expertise, but Lynette Williams at PIM USA, she's my web designer. She was very helpful, and they went and got in touch with Google, and so it's all up and running. The email's connected to the domain, which is now just willardhowe.com. So I'll be able to respond to anybody that answers the contact section of the website with questions or anything like that.
Awesome. And is there anywhere other than your website where people can find you? Any social media handles?
Yeah, it's on Facebook. There's a Facebook authors page and Instagram as well. But like I mentioned before, that's my next project. I'm almost done with the final edit. I did it. I went through the whole thing after it came back from the proofreader, and then I'm in the middle of doing it for the second time. Because when I send it back in, I really want to make sure everything's perfect. And so that's almost done. And once that's done, I'm going to try to make a really nice author's web page on Facebook. And I guess it would just be on Instagram as well, since they're both connected somehow. So I hope that, like I mentioned, I'm not really a techie and a social media person, but, I hope to get kind of familiar with using those platforms to communicate with readers, because I'm sure there'll be people that have questions. I always do whenever I read a book. So my book first came out in 2013, a long time ago, and the changes that I've made since then have been minor. They've been grammatical or just a few things like punctuation and changing a few words here and there, nothing major. And then with Marnie, I took some of her suggestions, and it's like polishing a pair of shoes. You really do it numerous times, and the last time you put a real sheen on it. So I'm right in that final phase. But there were times when it just sort of lay dormant, and that, nothing was happening and nobody really knew it existed. And fortunately, I found you guys.
Awesome. So thank you so much for talking with us today. We're looking forward to the launch, and I think that this is a story that's going to be touching for a lot of people. So we're excited for it to launch and come out.
I hope so. Thank you. I appreciate it.
That's great. Thanks.